Hello, and welcome to this DC Velocity webcast, Orchestrating the Future, PepsiCo's Warehouse Transformation. I'm Victoria Kickham, Senior Editor at DC Velocity. Thank you for joining us. In today's webcast, Keith Moore, CEO of AutoScheduler.AI, and Peter Hall, Warehouse Orchestration Senior Manager at PepsiCo, will discuss the rapidly changing warehouse landscape, common challenges in managing labor and introducing automation, and how PepsiCo has taken an innovative approach to revolutionizing its operations. Some key takeaways from our discussion will include data and system integration, learn how to think about your warehousing data and how it plays a role in optimizing warehouse operations, operational optimization, discover how advanced algorithms can help to maximize productivity and minimize costs, real-time visibility, understand how real-time insights for informed decision-making can be used in a warehouse, and how to bring about positive change management. Human and robotic integration. Hear about the impressive approach taken by PepsiCo to help their leadership teams plan for automation alongside a labor force. We have just a few announcements before we begin. First, here are some tips to help you connect and participate in the webcast. Please enable pop-ups within your browser. Turn on your system sound to be able to hear the presentation. This webcast is designed to be interactive between you and our presenters. Later in the program, we will have a question and answer session to allow you to ask our presenters questions relevant to the topics we discuss. You can participate in the Q&A session by asking questions at any time during the webcast. You don't have to wait until the very end to get your questions to us. Just type the question into the text box located on the bottom of the console. Then click the Submit Question button. We'll get to as many of those questions as we can. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our webcast help guide by clicking on the help link at the bottom of the console. So now let's get on with our program. Again, our speakers today are Keith Moore of AutoScheduler.AI and Peter Hall of PepsiCo. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So let's talk about the project PepsiCo has undertaken and the company's innovative approach to transforming its warehouse operations. And I'd just like to start by asking you both to just tell us a little bit about yourselves. What are your backgrounds and your current responsibilities?
All right, so my name is Peter Hall. I have been part of PepsiCo for the past 16 years. Started off with an industrial engineering background. And then throughout my career, I spent 5 years working at a couple of our facilities as frontline manager. And then when I transitioned to our headquarters team, I ran our labor management team for 8 or 9 years. And that was really integrating our WMS with a LMS and kind of really understanding labor performance and everything that's involved in that. After running the LMS team, transitioned to kind of region performance management, and then for the past 2 years has been leading our orchestration effort. So obviously that's what we're here to talk about, but basically from inception to kind of figuring out how we build it to actually deploying it.
And my name is Keith Moore. I'm the CEO of AutoScheduler based out of Austin, Texas. My background, so like Peter, engineering background, worked in control systems, test and measurement, data acquisition. So kind of what became IoT, big data. Early in my career, saw a need for more ability to process data, so analytics on top of data. So in 2013, 2014, started to get very heavily into machine learning and AI. Have been in this space now for about a decade. Am now, over the past 4 years, I'm the CEO of AutoScheduler.AI, which is focused on the topic of warehouse orchestration, what that is, how we bring it to our customers. We do a lot of work with some of the world's largest organizations like PepsiCo. And really excited to chat with everybody today. There's a lot of information we're going to go through, so I would encourage everybody as we go, please ask questions. As we're going, we'll try to address as many of them as we possibly can.
Great, thank you both. I'm going to start with you, Keith. So the warehouse software landscape has changed significantly over the past few years, and this new concept of orchestration you just mentioned is emerging. Can you shed some light on what is warehouse orchestration? What is it?
Yeah, so it is this new term, right? When we launched AutoScheduler, warehouse orchestration was not a term, right? I've had a Google search for warehouse orchestration for 5 years now. And up until the past year, it was only ever about us and press releases that AutoScheduler put out. And so it is certainly something that is more cutting edge, innovators, early adopters, gaining traction in the market. And what's brought it about is everybody in warehousing is familiar with the concept of a warehouse management system, a WMS. And once they get that in, they realize we are now collecting all of this data on what's in the building, when movements are happening in the building. And so companies, especially over COVID, have accelerated things like automation into their sites, or have had challenges hiring labor. And so can we bring in labor management tools to help us understand who's performing well, who's performing poorly, maybe why they're performing poorly. But what we've seen over the past 5 to 10 years, particularly accelerated by COVID, is warehouses have seen significant added complexity onto their operations. And complexity means something very specific, which is site flows are now nonlinear. There are multiple process and workflows that occur at every site, whether it's through labor, whether it's through automation, whether it's through unique customer requirements, whether it's through advanced demands put on the business, where we used to have 2 days of order locks at a CPG site. Now we may only have 6 hours before we need to ship something out the door. And this added complexity brings a need for sites to more intelligently understand how to run activities, how to balance labor, how to actually plan everything in the facility and help their leads, coordinators, shift managers do their job more effectively to actually get everything out the door in an optimal fashion. So that's what warehouse orchestration is all about. And that's why you're seeing it become so prevalent.
Great, thank you. So Peter, you deal with this every day. PepsiCo has been at the forefront of innovation in warehouse orchestration. Can you share some of the challenges your team faced and why you decided to pursue an orchestration project?
Yep. So kind of like what Keith alluded to, our warehouses have gotten a whole lot more complex. 10, 15 years ago, all of our warehouses were just kind of a square box. We kept product in there. There's one way in and out of them. But as our business was growing and we introduced different technologies and additions and everything, it wasn't just kind of a cut and dry solution on picking up from our production area, putting product on a trailer. What we found was we had to rely solely on our dock leads, our coordinators, to make the correct decision on how to flow product from the various areas of our warehouse to get it to its final destination. Sites that excelled well had someone that had 10, 15, 20 years experience in warehousing and basically could do that job based on past experience. Where we found an issue is right around COVID time, our average tenure significantly dropped, and we were constantly have to refill these positions. And it was really a struggle to kind of embed all that knowledge of, hey, this is the best way to run the warehouse, or this is how we flow product faster. This is the optimal way to run our WMS. So that's where we started thinking about, hey, what if we had a system that could take information from our production area, from our WMS, from our LMS, from transportation, and kind of throw it all into a giant math problem and say, hey, this is the best way to move forward. And then we provide that tool for our sites. And it's really like, hey, this is our game plan, go execute it. So that kind of started us off on why we needed an orchestration layer in our warehouses. And then we started looking, hey, how do we do that? And in typical Frito-Lay fashion, we wanted to build our tool ourselves. So we partnered with a couple different consulting companies to figure out, okay, here's all the data needed to make these decisions. This is how our top folks make the decisions. So we say, hey, we have to look at this report, this data, and everything to line it all up to be an optimal plan. But at the same time, we're like, hey, we want to test out this dock scheduling tool just to say, hey, where should we be activating these loads? And that's where we found AutoScheduler. And then we started looking at it, be like, hey, this could actually be the main engine that drives everything that we want from an orchestration platform.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you started this journey on your own and then realized you need a tech partner to kind of help you sort of tackle and get the full benefit of it. Sounds like you're saying. Is that right?
That's exactly correct.
So how far along are you in the project? You know, what's working? What are the challenges? Where are you in the whole process?
Yep. So we are about 2 years in, and this is kind of an overall kind of shift on how we're managing warehouses in general. So we reformatted our team to really focus in on specific areas of our operation. That we have a full team that focuses just on, hey, what is our site design? How do we want product to flow from production through the warehouse to a trailer? What types of automation do we want to add in here? What different technologies can we add in here? And we have a team that's solely focused on our WMS. Hey, how can we make our WMS smarter and be more efficient with how we store our product and how we move our product? We have another team that's focused on our people. So what is our capabilities? How are we training folks? What are the key reports, tools, venues that we need to be doing every day, every hour, and make sure as we introduce new technology, new systems and everything, that we're bringing our folks in the field along the way and making sure that they're trained on kind of the best practices from every aspect of warehousing. And then we have our, what we call our intelligent warehouse team. How can we bring in new technologies? What is our kind of step function change? What technologies are out there that we can implement? And that's where warehouse orchestration comes in. So all this was set up about 2 years ago. And last year from our orchestration team, it's more of defining what are the key data information from the systems. What are the data that we need? How can we get it to a centralized location? And then what tools is it going to feed into? So last year was all about capturing all of that, putting it in one location, finding the right partners to then transform that data into a usable plan and orchestrating the work. So last year was all about getting the data, getting a pilot site out, and then learning from that pilot, hey, what are we missing? How could it be better? And how can we integrate it into our current systems? So that was the main work last year. This year is our first kind of full deployment of, hey, we're going live with sites and they're following the plan and then following the plan and seeing what results we're getting. So right now we're in the second year, first full year of deployment, and we're be on this journey for probably the next 2 to 5 years.
And just
great, thank you.
Victoria, if you don't mind, just a call out to some of the things that Frito-Lay's done. So Frito-Lay team and the Pepsi team have done is we've done a lot of work with a lot of different customers. I want to stress, particularly in this process, in that their need, right? They saw the need. They went and they explored all options, including building it themselves. What's the right way to attack that problem? You know, obviously we partnered with them on building some of the orchestration componentry, and they went about it in a way that was, how can we quickly pilot what is valuable? Then once that pilot was successful, how do we scale that well? One of the big challenges I see across the space is speed to action isn't necessarily fast at a lot of organizations. Frito's done a really good job of acting quickly, and then when something was successful, growing that even faster in a way that can impact the network from a dollars and cents perspective within a year, right? This isn't yes, it's a 5 to 7 year project, but the actual turnaround time to value was extremely fast with regards to how the project was approached. And that's really a credit to our partners at PepsiCo.
Great, thank you. I wanted to follow up on something, Peter. You hit on a critical concept, which I think data, plays a critical role in optimizing all of this. Keith, how should companies think about integrating their warehousing data across systems? Are there any sort of tips or best practices? Where to start there?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of different things in a lot of different areas, but Peter hit on it, is that knowing what data you have and having a good enough quality of data for decision making is critical. You always think about kind of the base layer of analytics is always going to be data, garbage in, garbage out, overused expression at this point. but completely true. What we're talking about with orchestration, it's past the point of, can we build a good plan for a site? We are acting, expecting, and measuring compliance on people's ability to leverage data and follow the plans that we're creating in orchestration. So if you do not have good data, your ability to actually foresee what is going to happen at a site and optimize that pathway to maximize service levels and minimize cost is not going to happen very well. And the biggest challenge we see is most people have a warehouse management system at this point. But on top of your warehouse management system, there are a lot of data sources that have to be considered. I go to so many different sites, and this is something we've seen where your WMS doesn't have your most up-to-date appointment data. Or you might have a yard data that includes your trailer information that isn't available in your WMS, or your real-time transportation visibility data is in a 4Kites or a Project 44 and not inside of this single source of data. And so it's not just about getting good data, it's also about understanding what is the system of truth for every bit of data that we have, and how do we feed all of that into an orchestration platform. Kind of the base layer of every orchestration platform, including AutoScheduler, needs to be the ability to synthesize data across all of these different silos operationally in and around distribution, and then leverage that to build better plans to where when somebody looks at it, not only is it telling them what to do, but it's also giving them the confidence that this is telling me what to do, and it has all of the best data that I would have to go hunt across 7 different systems to get.
Keith, I see you Peter, I see you kind of nodding. Would you have anything to add to that in terms of what you experienced in kind of making this happen with all this data that you have?
Yep. Yeah. So we're kind of changing the work and changing the kind of concepts of how we are managing our warehouse. Like Keith said before, we would rely on like 5 to 7 different tools, or whether it be homegrown tools or different reports to run to get information on, hey, what's the best next step? And that's where orchestration comes in. It answers those questions before we ask. So when it comes to kind of how we perceive to get better and better, we really kind of tapped out on the, hey, let's just go faster. Let's just use the same tools and everything. You can only go so far. You have to start doing things differently. So when we introduced orchestration, it's really just, hey, what are the key things that we have to look at to come up with the best plan? And let's just eliminate the need to actually go physically check all of those things and have a system automatically check everything and just tell you what to do. So that's where orchestration comes in. We look at the inventory. We look at, hey, if we have this plan of activating so many loads, or having to finish work that got started on the other shifts, like how many people do we need? Do we have the space to do it? Where is our inventory? Should we activate it in our traditional warehouse? Should we activate it in our automated warehouse? What does production look like? Are we going to have the right product on time? Do I know, hey, there's no way I'm going to load this on time because I don't have the product, or I don't have the people or anything? Now I have a tool that just tells me the answer instead of having to rely on someone to check all of these things. And so instead of just like, hey, this load goes out in 5 minutes, I'm still waiting on production. When I have a tool that told me an hour ago, 5 hours ago, 12 hours ago, hey, you're not going to have this in time, so you should probably change things up or push back the dispatch time or sub out products with another product.
So as this has evolved, what are you doing better than before, and what are you doing completely differently? If you can give a couple of examples, maybe.
Yeah, so in our traditional warehouse, we would have a dispatch log or a load sheet. It says, hey, these are all the loads for the day. This is when they need to go out. So we would literally go line by line, be like, okay, this is the first load, this is the second load, this is the third load. Then we'd have to completely rely on people at the warehouse to do all the research for the loads. Do I have the right product? Do I have the right people? Where is the product? What type of load is this? Does it require special loading conditions, or can this go through automation? Can this, does this need to be transferred to another area of the warehouse before it gets loaded? Now it just tells us what to do. Like we get the plan saying, hey, you need to start this load at 5 p.m. It's going to get done around 9 p.m. It requires X amount of effort to load it. And we're expected to load it at 100%, or we're expected to load it at 98%. And then we can make faster and more informed decisions based on the output of the orchestration tool.
Yeah, and I would actually call out, if you don't mind, Victoria, so I'm going to jump in as well. In that, what are you doing, differently to that question? Is that the Pepsi team has done a very good job of queuing up change management organizationally. Obviously, having a software that does all of the AI and advanced mathematics to tell them how to run the site effectively. So, capture all that tribal knowledge, account for all of the constraints that might exist with regards to product flow that's valuable. But what do you do differently, and how does somebody go from looking at a screen, making a decision, saving themselves 20 minutes and running a more efficient site? That's a change management problem. And I would call out for everybody listening in, there is rolling out AI solutions in a network, particularly in warehousing, which is a very complex space, requires a huge amount of change management. It's important that you invest that up front to understand how to do it effectively in order for it to be successful. And I think that's something that's really happened here, which is really a credit to Peter's team.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's been, really transformative for you, Peter. Keith, I wonder if you can talk about, complementary software generally isn't viewed as transformative, right? And what's different here, in addition to what you were just talking about, and how so compared to all the other software available in the warehouse?
Yeah, this is something we hear from a lot of the folks we work with, which is when you're getting to the level of orchestration and being transformative, like it's not just, I want analytics that tell me a little bit more about my warehouse. You are foundationally changing the mode in which your distribution facilities operate. The people inside of the facility are fantastic. And it is, that is, you want to keep that the case. And there's a lot of things that companies do to try and make sure that they retain their people and leverage all their people effectively. But what's transformative about this is your WMS and the WMS space has been designed primarily for inventory management, control, and execution flow management. But what it does not do is that critical thinking. And the transformative piece of what we're talking about is how do you automate some of the highly critical thinking so that when you present decisions to people that know what they're doing, they can trust them, and then your best people are able to spend their time fighting fires instead of dealing with the monotony of what do I do next? Do I have the product? What flow does that product need to go through? You're talking about something that changes the way you run and design your overall warehouse execution on top of systems that already exist. So pulling together all these silos of data into a singular view that everybody, whether it's your 20-year tenured veteran on shift 1 or your 3 days on the job on shift 3 coordinator, can all look at, get the same measure of value, and start as a baseline. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. So one other thing that we write about and we talk about frequently here at the magazine is the advent of robotics and automation in the warehouse. And I know that's a big part of what you do as well, Peter. But integrating both human labor and robotic automation, what lessons have you learned about sort of balancing those two, and how has that affected your labor planning and productivity in light of this project?
Yeah, so our kind of path with automation first started off just with, hey, how can we move product throughout our warehouse? And we found solutions that work well, solutions that didn't work well on it. But hey, how can we keep up with our demand? Do we add more forklift labor? Do we add different AGVs, AMRs, that type of technology? Some of it works well with our product, some of it doesn't. And so it's really like trial and error with that. But mainly, whenever we add on, we have limited footprints in our current facilities. So a lot of our storage solutions then become ASRs, high-rises, crane solutions. And then you have to really plan on, hey, how long does it take to get product in and out of those pieces of equipment? And then we started looking at, hey, what are the activities that our team members don't like to do that, hey, we can say, hey, team members don't mind driving forklifts. Like you go, you pick up the product, you deliver it from point A to point B. They really don't like getting off their forklift and have to load cases and do a lot of the manual work. So what are the kind of our biggest pain points of reasons why people maybe not want to work in the warehouse, and kind of elevate their positions? Like, hey, instead of loading cases, now I'm operating this piece of equipment that loads for me. And you're in that elevated role that you might not have thought of when you first joined a warehouse driving a forklift. So we look at kind of the pain points of the warehouse, and is there any technology that is there to enhance it versus just completely eliminate the work. We went through many different evolutions of that, but then that gets us into the problem of, hey, now our warehouses are super complex. So if I need to move product from our production area or our standard conventional racking, and it now needs to go out of dock doors that now we put new technology, new automation and everything, I have to then plan around that. So now I need to understand, hey, how does our WMS interact with that technology and everything? What are all the kind of steps along the way that that go into getting the demand in our system and actually moving the product? And how long does it take to make sure it gets to that final destination on time? So that's where we kind of then said, okay, now we made all these complex warehouses. Now we need something to help manage the product flow.
Got it. Thank you. So you're a year into it, I think you said. What do the results look like so far?
Yep. With the sites that we went live with, one site in particular we had as our kind of our pilot site, and that's where we kind of put a lot of our new team structure in place of, hey, what if we would design a site that has the right layout, optimize our WMS's decision making, make sure that everyone is trained and understood what the daily processes are, and then throw orchestration on top of that. We've had sites that we've seen an increase of 30 to 35% just in their pallet moves. So it's not adding additional labor or pieces of equipment. It's we got 30 to 35% on average of just more moves within the same time frame with the same number of equipment and people. On sites that we didn't do kind of the full out blitz that we just added orchestration to, we're seeing right now we're averaging about 12% increase in moves per hour. But the main thing is we're learning, hey, there's some outages in our system that people are just making manual workarounds to get it to work. So it's identifying kind of gaps and opportunities that we have that now it's like, oh, wait, this data isn't flowing correctly. And it's now because of this, and sites have to constantly be either just manually sending notes saying, hey, this has to be loaded a certain way, or actually the dispatch time isn't at 4 a.m., it's really 2 a.m., so I need to plan around that. So it's really cleaning out kind of unknown issues that we had. But overall, just from a productivity standpoint, we're seeing double-digit increases.
And,
wow, terrific.
You know,
Go ahead.
I think Peter's hit on a few different things. If you don't mind, Victoria, me jumping in on a few other areas as well, which is a lot of times when people look at orchestration, the easiest thing from a metrics perspective to look at is the productivity increase, and that's generally what pays the bills. But these kind of soft values that Peter's mentioning with regards to, we have gone through, you know, of the large number of sites we've rolled out, we now know where their data gaps are, and we've resolved a lot of them. So everybody now has good data that they're working off of. We've gotten rid of a lot of non-standard process in the network. And then the last thing is just load readiness and fill rates. I can't speak to the numbers because it's not my organization, but I think generally you see a load readiness and fill rate perspective, which is really equivalent to most companies' service level. That number is going to be maximized because what orchestration is designed to do, yes, you want productivity gains, but you cannot do that at the with sacrificing service level. And so service levels are absolutely maximized as part of the objective function for orchestration. I don't know if you want to add anything there, but wanted to make sure to call that out.
Yeah. So with this, there's three main kind of performance metrics that we're looking at, and it's just overall like pallet move efficiency, and that's where we're seeing a lot of increases. But you hit it right there with our load readiness. Are we finishing our loads on time, and our fill rate? Do we have the right product on the loads?
So we've had quite a few questions coming in from our audience, but I have one more that I wanted to, or a couple more I wanted to ask you guys before we do that. So first, for someone to embark on this journey, what are a few things you need to consider? You've mentioned a lot so far, but maybe a couple of quick hit points.
Data. You need data. The biggest thing here is, do I have all the correct information? So understanding, hey, all the decision making that you want to optimize for, do I have all the information needed? And that's where it's like we probably talk data more since we went live than anything else. But data is the most important thing, because when we try to see, hey, where do we want to go tomorrow, next couple of years and everything, the first thing we talk about is like, okay, what data do we need? What frequency? Where does it come from? How do we get it from that system to AutoScheduler? Or is it, hey, we massage the data on our end and then send it already there? Or do we send raw data to AutoScheduler and then they use that to optimize the plan? But data was probably the biggest thing. And then as we're getting to the deployment phase, it's all change management. Mm-hmm. So we partnered with our change management team and our run right teams here to ensure that not only do we come up with the optimal solve, but we have the proper communication to our sites. We get the site leaders involved. We get a training plan in place. We have all the correct training materials. We set up the deployments to make sure that they're not interfering with other initiatives, and then making sure that the change sticks. And it all comes down to change management.
Yeah, I would add a third as well. So data, change management, and then the third piece, just for folks that are looking to get into orchestration, right? There has to be a driver, and that driver, yes, you have to have a certain level of data maturity in order. So do you have the data, or do you know where the data is to actually embark on this? Do you have the appetite for change management at sites? And I would recommend folks start light with that, right? One, can you get it working with the data? Then two, how do you get a core group of champions at a singular site? Which, Peter knows, when you have people that really will endorse something at a single site, bringing them to the next one is a really good idea. So that way your change management's a little bit easier, because somebody can say, hey, by the way, I did this and I was able to get X% productivity out of it, and my job's a lot easier. But the third thing is having some measure of complexity in your operation, and that orchestration and what we do, still new, we covered that at the beginning, is not a good fit for everybody. Now, I would think it's a good fit for a lot of sites, but you have to have a measure of complexity. If if you only have a few people in your operation that run at any point in time, if you have a linear process flow, we bring things in, we pick everything the same way, and it goes out. That's not a highly complex site. If you can plan it easily on a spreadsheet or a whiteboard, that may not be the right fit for software. So having process flow complexity, having a large amount of labor that you have to balance across an operation, having a huge number of constraints and bottlenecks, or your Herbie, if you think of the Ali Goldratt book on it, right? You have to have something in your site that makes it a challenge to manage, which most sites have. But I want to call that out, is if you're listening in and you have 10 people in a warehouse and only 7 people on a forklift at a time, it may not be a fit.
Thank you. I'd love to move to some of the audience questions, if you guys don't mind. First, one that, and you guys may have answered this, I can't remember, how many facilities are included in the initiative? I don't know if you mentioned how many facilities are in this project, Peter.
So we're targeting to eventually go to all of our what we call plant warehouses. So all of the warehouses that are attached to a manufacturing facility within our foods division, so our Frito-Lay facility. We started with kind of our most complex sites because those are the ones that would reap the biggest benefits. And we targeted about a third to do in this year, another third next year, and then finish up here in the next next couple of years. With that, I guess I should just say a number. That's around, give or take, around 40 sites.
Thank you. So someone else is asking for an example of a situation where they'd have to go to multiple systems to get the data they need in a project like this. I don't know who wants to take that one?
Certainly, right? To do orchestration well, I'm just going to list data that you really want to be considering, and then I can talk a little bit about the future state of that. But in order to do this well, you need to know what inventory you have, where your inventory is. Generally, you can get this in a WMS, what you need to ship, when you need to ship it, what is coming in, when it is planned to arrive, what inventory is on that. So that gets into like ASN data. You also, if you're running a plant, you need to know your production schedule. What does your production schedule look like? What lines are running? When are they running? You also might need to know what is the bill of materials that is going to that production schedule, or are there certain materials that need to be shuttled to an area like an Amazon Flex area, an inventory movement in that capacity. There is more data around real-time visibility of transportation that can be valuable. You might want data, so for example, around trailers. So what trailers are on the yard? I have certain loads that are run by certain carriers, and I need a trailer in order to actually get started on a drop load for that carrier. Is that something I can start, and is that something I can plan for? Or do I need to unload a trailer so that I free up the trailer for an outbound? And I'm going through kind of a very small piece of the data needed, but all of these things have to interplay. And I think if you do a thorough investigation of your system, right, 80% of the data is probably in a warehouse management system. But it's that 20% when you're searching for perfect, because the end state, you're automating this back in. Can you automate functions inside of the WMS? And we have some sites that are doing that today. Is you're automating workflow back in. It is auto managing and releasing that work and scheduling when that work is going to happen. And somebody just has to click OK to do that. When you get into that point of automation, data quality is extremely important. And so I don't know if you want to talk about some of the different systems we're pulling data from in order to get everything I just mentioned.
Yep. Yeah. So we're pulling data in from our LMS or our WMS system. That's the main feed. And that's what we started our pilot with. We just had a connection with our WMS. And then when we realized it's like, hey, this doesn't tell the whole story, that we need to get updated information. So we started looking at kind of, hey, dispatch times. What all systems does our traffic transportation team use? Is it a different source from company fleet versus common carrier loads? And how often do they get updated? Where the data is? What are the current processes there? So it's mainly our WMS, our transportation systems. We pull in from our LMS system, hey, how long should it take to do these types of moves? We are looking at our YMS systems for asset availability. And we're starting to look at all of our crewing and scheduling tools. So, hey, if we know we need additional labor for certain shifts, certain days and everything, how can we integrate that just to automate, hey, I need to see if anyone wants to volunteer for to pick up extra shifts, or if someone's requesting to be off and everything, do we have the availability to accommodate that with our schedule? But really our WMS, LMS, YMS, any S's.
Yeah, so there's a lot of systems in a warehouse. I think a lot of folks on here, we can see some of the questions coming in, and there's quite a lot. So if we don't get to all of them, I apologize. But I want to add one additional piece, right? I talked about automating work back into the WMS, but the orchestration should not stop there, right? Which is, if we have all this data in one place, we're building a plan. Why aren't we taking this data from transportation and also feeding back data on, hey, that load tomorrow that has a 12 o'clock dispatch time? Well, turns out the production schedule that you need for the inventory on that load won't have produced the inventory you need until 3 o'clock. Transportation team, can we move that appointment to 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock to give us that leeway? Or conversely, transversely, in another way, could we look at some of these loads and say, well, that appointment that's supposed to be at midnight tonight, turns out the site's running pretty far ahead. That's going to be ready at 4 p.m. So you can come pick that up early if you want. And it's not just communicating, right? PepsiCo and Frito is well known for having a very large internal transportation team, but there are also carriers that they work with. Can you start to communicate that externally so that when somebody comes to pick up from the site, they know exactly what the status of that load is, not just when it's ready, but a day ahead of time. When is it scheduled to be ready, and how is that fluctuating based on current flow at the facility? So what orchestration affords is not just the ability to gain productivity in the site, but how do you leverage the site as a node in the supply chain to communicate effectively across the rest of the organizations and the silos traditionally that you're operating with?
So just a question's kind of related to that. Someone's asking what's the best frequency to update the data in AutoScheduler to make it most effective?
So the data feed coming in, for it to be optimal, you would want as near real time as possible. As far as kind of the output of solves and everything, it depends on your operation. So for our bulk warehouses, we find that about once an hour is good, because if we're constantly changing the plan, it's going to be hard to follow. So we don't want to be updating it every single time we get a data feed, but we want to get updates on our progress. So I'd say that the in feeds, all the inputs should be as near real time as possible. When it comes to progress of trips and any, if there's any changes to trips, that should just be, hey, an on demand, like, hey, I adjusted this appointment or adjusted the carrier in some way. That should just be, hey, as the change happens, it gets sent over. But then the output frequency should be either based on, hey, this is what the shift should do, or hey, throughout the shift, it changed about every hour, every 2 hours.
And someone's asking, Peter, did Frito-Lay face resistance from existing warehouse employees embarking on this project?
With any change, people have questions and are scared of it. Probably the biggest thing that the constant feedback is, hey, I'm a warehouse scheduler and I'm installing a software called AutoScheduler. What happens to my job? It's really about the change management and educating folks that, hey, this isn't eliminating anyone's position or anything like that. It's a tool to enhance it and answer questions faster, so then you can use that information, make smarter decisions faster, and then start looking at, hey, from a whole setup issue, now that I don't have to spend all of my time in the weeds figuring out what my issues are, I know what my issues are. Let's go figure out what the root cause is and just fix them there, and find different ways to do things better. But it all comes down to the change management. That you have to be as transparent as possible, what it does, what it's solving for, and how we integrate that into your day in the life. But yeah, we had resistance and everything, but as long as you manage that change and take folks along with you for the ride, then it makes it a lot smoother transition.
And I'll add 2 additions there, which is building very good SOPs, so standard operating procedures up front is critical. So with orchestration, right, if you're doing it well, like with AutoScheduler, you get a very powerful tool. It can do and tell you a lot of things, all the way down to like, what do your slotting shorts look like in a case pick circuit 24 hours from now? Things that like people spend a lot of time building out and analyzing, but building standard operating procedures around, this is what your day in the life looks like. Here's exactly what you need to check in with. Yes, there are a lot of other functionalities you can use to help you with your job, but kind of baking in some of the base layer functions as a part of the day-to-day is super critical, and understanding the from to. And then the second piece is most sites, this is impacting your coordinators, your supervisors, your shift leads, your taskers, that type of role. People get to that role because they are really good at understanding the flow of the operation. So just as Peter pointed out, like the whole purpose of this tool is to make their life easier so that they can go be impactful with the 1,000 fires that come up that you can't schedule around inside of any warehouse. And that's why this is so valuable from a change management perspective, is pointing that out and helping people understand this is value add to your job so you can be more value add to the site. Generally gets people to align with the strategy much more quickly.
Terrific. And there's quite a few more questions. There's one for you, Keith. Do you have an experience with implementing your this tool in the company in which the warehousing or logistics is outsourced to a 3PL, where you don't have full decision-making power or you don't have a full view into productivity or performance-related KPIs?
Yep, we do. There's a few 3PLs. We actually do have 3PL customers today, and some of them are absolutely fantastic because the job of a 3PL is to you are the logistics and distribution arm of a major manufacturer or shipper generally. And they see it as gaining productivity, gaining throughput, gaining predictability in their sites drives value for their customer relationship. But yes, we have been engaged and done a lot of work with shippers that have 3PLs, and there's a bit of a strained relationship because there's not a lot of visibility into what the 3PL is doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it. Particularly when you get into contracting models of what's cost plus versus not cost plus or fixed variable, you start to get into a level of complexity that's a little challenging. But what I have seen, and we've done both types of relationships, is this is extremely valuable from a shipper perspective because what orchestration then gives you is how should they be running the site? How are they running the site? Where are the gaps? How well are they utilizing labor? How well are they utilizing space? How do we report all that information in real time and in the future back to the people that are kind of the owners of that product? But getting a 3PL on board and with regards to utilization is, again, at the end of the day, they're your end users. When we go and roll out, there are partners as a part of the rollout. So yes, the visibility is valuable for a shipper, but you generally want the 3PL on board for the value purposes of I can now plan labor more effectively. I can ensure inventory flows effectively. I can use this as a tool to help my team. But then as a shipper, you get all those benefits on top of it. That's the best way to approach the scenario, but it can get very sticky if it's a strained relationship.
Thank you. So let's do one more. I know we're running short on time here. How does orchestration improve safety or affect safety of personnel? I know you mentioned it will improve productivity, but how about safety? I don't know, either of you can jump in on that.
Yeah, so the way that we built kind of the standards on like how long it should take everything is all from our LMS, which when we build all those, we follow strict safety standards on, hey, what is the appropriate amount of time to do each activity. All of our warehouse activities have SOPs on how to do what's the proper way to load a case, what's the proper way to drive a forklift, things like that. All of that is taken into account that, hey, the assumption is we're following all of our SOPs correctly. From a overall kind of, is it more safe or less safe? I would say it's exactly the same when it comes to safety. Like that's paramount. That's a core foundation for all of our warehouse work. So we put in any type of restrictions we have on labor scheduling. Like we can't assume that people are working more than X amount of hours per day, per shift, per week, things like that. So all that's built into just how we build the standards within the system.
One thing I'd add maybe is just on safety, and this is going to be a niche case, but there are a lot of sites in some of the sites we work at where there is a large number of different pick areas that you have to go in, and you have to balance labor between them. One thing that something like this in orchestration does afford is we tell you how to balance your labor, and we make it a constraint. You can't ever put your workforce in an unsafe way. So you can actually cap the number of people that can be in any area at any point in time so that you avoid congestion in that area, and then build your plan in such a way that you're still flowing all of the product to the floor and picking it at the rate it needs to be picked to get everything out on time. So you're planning ahead, avoiding things like congestion by doing so. But as Peter indicated, right, it is still going to be one of the most paramount focuses for every individual on the floor to still take responsibility.
Terrific, thank you. We are running toward the end of our time here. To both of you, I wanted to ask, how can attendees get more information after the webcast? Where can they go to learn more about what we've discussed here today?
I mean, they can feel free to reach out to me. I don't know if my contact information is posted anywhere on here. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me and we can have some more specific conversations on if it is a good fit for your warehouse, your company, as well as kind of if you have specific questions on how to get started or what our thought process was, be more than willing to talk through those questions.
Your LinkedIn is going to get really popular. And same for me, right? Please reach out on LinkedIn, Keith Moore. And if you want to hear more about AutoScheduler and what we've done in this capacity or with anybody else, sales at AutoScheduler.AI, info at AutoScheduler.AI. We have a lot of people that really like educating people in this space. So it by no means has to be a requirement that it's something that you go and acquire and purchase. Like, we're happy to just chat about it as well. And there's a lot of folks on our team that are happy to help in that capacity.
Terrific. Well, thank you both. Shortly, I should also tell the audience, shortly after this live event, we'll send you an email reminder to access this presentation on demand, so you can view it once more or share it with a colleague. Thanks again to Keith and Peter for making this discussion possible. Thank you both.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah. And thank you all in the audience for sharing your time today. We know that your time is valuable, and we hope you walked away with some good ideas to help you optimize your warehouse for the future. For all of us at DC Velocity, I'm Victoria Kickham. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.